Welcome to Shifting Veils. My name is Michelle.
And I am Isaiah, and this is where we talk about things we find just outside of Clearview. So if you like the unexplained, possibly paranormal, and always strange, stick around as we explore the possibilities of what is beyond our natural senses.
Have you ever sat alone in the dark and thought you saw something out of the corner of your eye? What did you tell yourself? I'm just tired. I didn't sleep well last night. I'm just paranoid. I watched too much spooky shit.
All of the above.
I listened to too many spooky podcasts. In my case, I record too many spooky podcasts.
All of it, all of the above.
Yeah. Mention of shadow people can be traced back to various religious beliefs, legends, and folklore. Some people believe the dark humanoid figures are ghosts or demons, while some think they are spiritual or supernatural. Reports of shadow people can be connected to medical conditions like dementia, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, insomnia, sleep paralysis, which we've covered before, narcolepsy, borderline personality disorder, and substance abuse. In dementia, visual hallucinations are common in advanced stages as the brain's interpretive faculties deteriorate. In bipolar disorder, there are distinct periods of mania and depression. These heightened moods can increase chances of experiencing hallucinations. In schizophrenia, there are marked disruptions in thought processes, perception, and emotional responsiveness. Schizophrenia commonly involves hallucinations, which can extend to seeing shadow people. With insomnia, it's well known fact that a lack of sleep can lead to visual illusions. Around 80% of severely sleep deprived people experience some form of hallucinatory phenomena. That's a lot,
It is.
um, including shadowy figures. Sleep paralysis can cause hallucinations, and in some cases, even narcolepsy can. And I think substance abuse is pretty obvious, especially if you're using methamphetamine, psychedelics, or purposely improperly dosing medications. Those with borderline personality disorder struggle with heightened emotional states, heightened stress, increased perceptual sensitivity, and difficulties with emotional regulation, which can all cause them to be more likely to experience the phenomena of seeing shadow figures. If you suspect your experiences stem from any underlying medical condition, I recommend you consult a healthcare professional for proper assessment or support. Um, some people are spooked out by them, believing they're malevolent. Some people believe they're harmless, friendly, even. Whatever you believe, they have been reported for decades. I'm going to tell you about my stuff, but first I got to get this peppermint out of my mouth. I feel like I'm making clicky noises on my teeth with it. Hang on. And we can edit this out, but this is bugging me. I got it stuffed in my cheek. And I could hear it clicking, but I don't know if it was coming out on the mic. Okay. The first time I saw a shadow person, I was 7 years old. My family lived in a 2-story, 4-bedroom house that was host to a lot of probably paranormal, mostly unexplained, and definitely strange happenings. These shadow figures would move quickly from one quarter to the next. They were somewhat formless at times, and in others they appeared as bipedal humanoid form. I was frightened by them. I would often procrastinate going to the restroom because most of the time I would see them moving through the hallway between the bedrooms on the way to the bathroom. It was a habit of mine to slowly make my way to the bathroom, like looking for them and being cautious for them, and then run back to the living room as fast as I could when I was done. So they didn't get me. They spooked me out, and I knew what I was seeing was real because I would overhear other family members talk about these shadow figures. I have periodically seen these shadow figures throughout my entire life. And while as an adult I developed a sleep disorder, I can't say that it's during bouts of insomnia that I've seen them. So, based on my personal experience, I've never perceived shadow people as good or bad. They were just there. They've creeped me out when I was a kid, and sometimes they still do, but they were just there, lurking in the dark. And while I really don't wish to share my space with them, I can't say that they've ever caused me harm, that I've known anyway. Although they have frightened me, they have given me that heavy, ominous feeling that instilled fear in me and caused me to sleep with the light on countless nights. I've wondered what they wanted, if anything, and like so many other people out there, I wondered what they were. That answer comes in speculation mostly, and it largely depends on who you ask what you'll be told. Some people say that shadow people are interdimensional beings. Others say they're aliens. Maybe they're ghosts, angels, or perhaps demons. And again, it just depends on who you ask. The Choctaw people speak of a legendary entity called Nala. I knew I was gonna fucking do this shit. Okay. The Choctaw people speak of a legendary entity called Nalusa Falaya. Nalusa Falaya is said to be a grotesque humanoid figure that moves eerily at an unnatural speed. Its name translates roughly to long black being or long dark creature, underscoring its dark, shadowy nature. Its most chilling feature, its ability to manipulate fear. It lurks in the shadows and preys on the emotional vulnerabilities of its victims. Rather than attacking its prey outright, Nalusophilia is said to sow seeds of terror through stealth and trickery, causing its victims to panic, flee, or lose their way. It represents more than just a physical threat. It's an embodiment of psychological fear, the dread of what lurks unseen in the darkness. I actually remember my dad talking about this when I was a kid. He would tell me that it, whatever it was, could hear my thoughts and would know my greatest fears, so I had to focus on other things. He said that if I allowed it to know my fear and gave it power by being afraid, that it would present itself to me by appearing as what I feared most, which only terrified me more because I just imagined that I was going to see the thing that I was so scared of.
Right.
That didn't help. In Middle Eastern folklore, it's believed that shadow figures are jinns in disguise. Jinns are interdimensional beings with the ability to take different shapes and appear many different ways, or not at all. At times, they seem to be a smokeless fire, the heat that hovers above the flame. Shadow figures are just one of the many forms jinns can take when presenting themselves in our realm, according to Middle Eastern folklore. Researchers have found that many people who see shadow beings also report experiences with other phenomena like alien abductions or poltergeist, suggesting a common source. It's suspected that jinn are behind many hauntings. This theory aligns with Islamic descriptions of jinn as living unseen alongside us because they just don't wish to be seen. They only show up if they feel it's necessary or if they're called upon. As for those who see shadow beings involuntarily, this is believed to be because they are greatly attracted to people or locations that are associated with negative energy or emotions like fear, anxiety, anger, insecurity, and low self-image. If your mind is under the influence of strong negative emotions in any way, that could potentially unlock great sensory and emotional channels that attract them. Seeing that jinn and lore can be good, evil, or in between, this theory might explain why some shadow people encounters feel malicious while others are just merely eerie. Some people have documented benevolent encounters with shadow people to the point of absolutely insisting that they are harmless. And others will argue just the opposite, saying that they have a dark agenda towards mankind. And while they may not always attack you physically, their war with you is one of the mind. um, didn't we find you found some firsthand accounts of experiences with shadow beings, didn't you? That we can
Uh,
go over.
sure.
I
Let me
think we
read
have
one.
some.
One night after an uneventful day, my wife and I retired for the night. We sleep in a large waterbed. Some time had passed and I was unable to sleep. My wife's breathing had become regular and reached a point of which I assumed that she was asleep. It must be also known that we leave a light on in the bathroom farthest from our bedroom, and it casts a glow through our open bedroom door. While lying there unable to sleep, I became aware of a presence, and suddenly and silently a figure moved through our bedroom door and proceeded parallel to our bed. Then, rounding the corner of our bed, took up a fixed position at the foot of our bed. I was aware that this entity was conscious of us and was intently watching us as we lay there. The entity can best be described as a something that had the appearance of black smoke or a shadow. However, it was more material than either of these, but less material than a real person. The most odd thing about this is my lack of fear. Although I was acutely aware of this being and the fact it was not of this earth as we perceive it, it did not seem to arouse any fear response in me. I would say it aroused a feeling that would fit somewhere between creepy and curiosity, especially considering the fact that it was aware of me as I was aware of it. After some time, I almost convinced myself that I was imagining it, but then I became aware of the fact that my wife was no longer breathing like she was asleep, but was breathing almost silently. I then said, "Honey, you awake?" To which she answered, "Yes." Then I said, "Do you see anything?" Expecting her reply to be, "What do you mean?" But which, to my surprise, she said, "You mean that thing standing at the foot of the bed?"
Ugh.
At this time, I did become somewhat nervous. We laid there for about 10 minutes and then it was gone. It just over a period of about 10 seconds became less solid and our perception of its presence became weaker until it wasn't there anymore. Then it was as if it had never been there. Nothing like this has happened since, and the only evidence it ever existed is my wife's and my memories of it. My memories of it.
No, I don't like it.
Yeah, that would be an eerie experience.
Yeah. I've experienced something like it.
I've
But
experienced a lot of somethings like that.
yeah, I mean specific to the foot of the bed thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Uh,
didn't like it.
there was one time when we saw something that was like crouched in the corner of the ceiling. It was
Oh,
weird.
hell no.
An-
Nope.
another story reads, It was an afternoon. It was an afternoon around 1 or 2 p.m. I was in my room playing with my sister, surrounded by our toys. At home, besides the two of us, our mother was the only other person, and she was sewing in another room at that moment. We were deeply engrossed in our game when, for a brief moment, we heard the door open. We suddenly looked toward it, expecting it to be someone we knew who had come home, or even our mom. However, what we saw was something unexpected. The figure was completely dark with no visible features or details. It looked like a standing shadow, but with a solid presence, as if it had weight and intent. It appeared when the door opened, moving silently and precisely. For a brief moment, about 3 seconds, it stayed there motionless, observing me and my sister. There were no eyes, no mouth, or any discernible human traits, only the dark silhouette contrasting with the surrounding environment. Then, with the same enigmatic calmness, it closed the door and vanished, leaving behind only the mystery of its presence. At that very moment, perhaps influenced by the excitement of playing with my sister, I instinctively ignored what I had just seen and simply continued playing, as if nothing had happened. However, after a few minutes, she and I ran to the room where our mother was and told her about the incident. Kids, man.
Mm-mm.
Kids are crazy like that.
Mm. Yeah. Well, you say kids, but there's been times as an adult where I've seen stuff and just been like, mm-mm, no, I didn't see that. I didn't
Well,
see that.
it's just, I know that. even as an adult, if I saw something like that, I don't think, like, again, it's kind of the same aspect of just going back to sleep.
Yeah.
I'm not going to just be like, well, that happened. I'm going to go back to reading my book or whatever.
I think with me, some of it has to do with that stuff that my dad instilled in me as a kid, where you know um, he would tell me that these things that I would see could hear my thoughts and would know my fears, and if I thought about those things I was afraid of, it would give it power, and um, which terrified me more because I was like, how do I just shut off being afraid of something?
Right.
So, it's silly. It really is silly. But a lot of the times, whenever I'm confronted with seeing something, my initial response is to look away, look back, tell myself it could have been any number of things. I really do try to debunk stuff in my mind. And sometimes I can make sense of it, and sometimes I can't. But I do kind of, in a sense, just like ignore it and go on with it sitting in the back of my mind. And I just kind of deal with it later. I think might even just be a common response that a lot of people have. Um, I don't,
Maybe.
I don't want to I don't want to believe that it's just me. I'm the only one
I
that does
mean,
that.
my response is, let's deal with this now, sort of thing.
I do that sometimes. There's been times when I've seen stuff in the home that I live in now where I will repeatedly see the same thing, and I'll just get irritated.
Hmm.
And I'm just kind of have this attitude of, look, what is it? What do you want?
Sure.
you know I because it's and I don't even ask, really. It's just kind of how, when you have someone that's nagging you or something, you're finally just like, what do you want? It's not like I'm going to ask, what do you want? It's more of along the lines of, this is my space, and I don't like what you're doing, and kind of response. And a lot of times it ends, at least for a while.
Hmm.
But yeah, anyway. Uh, that was a rabbit trail. Sorry, guys.
Nah, that's all right. It was the same subject matter. Someone else said, I had a similar experience at my grandmother's house recently while visiting from another country. About 11 p.m., could hear a lot of random noises in the house creaking, banging, bathroom fan turning on and off. It also had the dog on edge who was in the bedroom with me. I get up to get a glass of water, and while starting to walk down the hallway, I saw this black wispy form hovering in midair. It noticed my presence, and I'll never forget how quickly it flew through the doorway leading to the kitchen and out of sight. It scared the absolute shit out of me. One medical professional said, I work in the medical field and was working up a patient who had come in for a routine exam. At the beginning of the exam, the mom of the patient let me know that they were there because the child's psychiatrist wanted to rule out anything physically wrong before proceeding with a mental evaluation. This prompted me to ask what was going on with her child, and before the mom could respond, the child, who's 12, says they see shadow people. I asked how long they had been seeing the shadow people, and they said since I was 5. I asked where they saw them, such as out of the corner of their eye, etc., and they responded with everywhere, especially in mirrors. I asked what they looked like, and they responded with black figures. Also worth mentioning, when they said they had been seeing them since they were 5, the mom said, "You mean when all that other stuff started happening?" From a medical standpoint, I know this could be schizophrenia, but as a person who's experienced things myself that I can't explain, especially when I was a child, I wonder if this could be paranormal. Lastly, after running some tests, there was nothing physically wrong with them.
Okay. So the child is 12, and the child has been seeing things since they were 5. I need to know, um, like, how common is it for a 5-year old to present with schizophrenia? I mean, this is not just a new issue to this 12-year-old. This has been happening since they were 5. So,
I,
and
I think there's rare cases. I mean, because the brains are developing. I'm speaking out my ass, I'm sure, but when it comes to children, their brains are still developing until what, like 20, I think.
I'm
Um,
good. I think with females, till about, I think 21. For males, it's about 25.
okay, so their brains are still very early developing at 5. I think there's a possibility of uh, mental issues.
Oh, yeah, I do think there's a possibility. I just don't know. And just because it's not in the DSM doesn't mean that it doesn't exist
Sure,
at 5 years old.
sure.
I'm just kind of curious. I don't know. I kind of feel for this medical professional because, they have gone to school, they have all this medical training, and they have all this science that explains away a lot of things. But then they're also a human being that has experienced things that science hasn't necessarily given us an explanation for.
Hmm.
And while having that, they have to treat a patient, and they don't want they I imagine, like it says, they didn't find anything physically wrong with them. So they're going to send this child back to the psychiatrist who we don't know, but the way things go, likely put the child on medication, whether the child is seeing shadow beings that are paranormal or the child is experiencing a medical condition like schizophrenia.
Right.
So, listen, I've periodically seen a physician that specializes in psychiatry. And there's some questions that are just run of the mill, always ask questions. One of them being, do you ever see things? And my answer has always been, well, yeah, of course. I grew up in southern Louisiana. Everything's haunted there. I've seen this stuff since I was not much older than 5. So, like this patient you're just talking about, I was also seeing things at 5 years old. And each time I say that to the doctor in the past, when that's happened, I see them scribble on their little notepad, and I'm thinking, great, she thinks I'm nuts. And I mean, if I'm nuts, then I've been nuts since I was 5. So, um, I went down a rabbit hole and I found a guy that studied civil and environmental engineering in Georgia. He had taken up quite an interest in the phenomena of shadow beings and had done some deep dives on the subject. And I just wanted to share what he put out there. I know some people are skeptical that these things actually exist. Well, they do. At least they were documented during the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Application Program, which, if I have to say again, I'm just going to say AAWSAP, which is a lot in and of its own. Um, the secret program ran from 2008 to 2010 and has been described at length in a recently published nonfiction book called Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, written by the Operations 2 manager, Colm Kelleher and James Lukatsky, and a leading investigative journalist, a longtime UFO researcher, George Knapp. The book documents an unexpected and in some ways disturbing link between UFOs, which the government now terms UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, and a number of kinds of bizarre paranormal events, one of which is what the authors refer to as shadow people. Normally, we think of UFOs as like nuts and bolts crafts with super technology operated by aliens, like actual physical spacecraft made out of like steel, or something of the sort. A major government project still coming to light discovered the story appears much stranger than that. There are undeniably UAPs in our atmosphere, and even under the oceans. Do you remember? I think it was like last year, maybe, when all these memes and talk were coming out where people were joking because it was like, oh, yeah, the government's never really confirmed UFOs, but now they say they exist and they're in the ocean.
No, I don't remember that.
I do. God, it was everywhere. Like it's like, oh, we haven't ever really said that there's aliens out there, but now we're gonna say that there is definitely, and they're not in space; they're in the ocean on our planet.
Well, I remember them discussing that there are aliens. They put out the whatever the official documents and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
I don't remember them saying they were in the oceans.
So they're saying there's undeniably UAPs are in our atmosphere and even under the oceans, but they're often co-located, as the authors put it, with the most bizarre kinds of paranormal activities, including shadow people. But are these things real or psychically induced hallucinations or something even weirder? Is it weird? Is weirder a word? Or should be most weird? Even
Weirder,
something most
weirder is a word.
is it okay? I thought that would be improper. I'm not sure. I'll have to look it up later.
You could still say even more weird.
Even more weird. Or something even more weird, especially since some of them leave tracks. Yeah, so if it's psychically induced hallucinations and it leaves tracks, I don't know. It's just weird stuff.
Yeah, I don't
Even more
know.
weird.
It's strange.
Strange. Well, that's what we're here for.
What I find compelling about the book is that the authors have top secret clearances and the manuscript had to be submitted to the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency for approval before it could be published. This is not some pop UFO book with little credibility. It is the voice of a $22 million research program funded by Congress through the efforts of Senator Harry Reid. The paranormal phenomena were not what the team expected to encounter, but when these phenomena proved impossible to ignore, they decided that they ought to follow the data wherever it led. Many of the researchers, including all of the principal people, had bizarre and sometimes frightening encounters of a kind they refer to as high strangeness. Now, that's a term that I wouldn't say was proper.
High strangeness. Don't come at me with your high
And
strangeness.
we can put that in the info, our info.
Okay, yeah. Sounds good.
Initially, they experienced these things at a UFO hotbed in Utah, a rangeland property called Skinwalker Ranch. Their experiences typically mirrored stories that were told by people who had lived for decades in the
Is that
Utah
Utah?
Basin, where the ranch is located.
That's a typo. I'm sorry. I
The
think
term
it's a
skin,
typo.
it looks like a typo. Otherwise, I don't
Utah
know how to.
Basin.
Otherwise, I don't know how to pronounce that word.
Utah. Yeah, it's Utah Basin. I'm sorry.
The term skinwalker itself comes from a Navajo legend about a vindictive and evil medicine man who could transform themselves into beasts who walked upright and were otherwise nothing you would want to meet in a dark area. Along with actually spotting this and some other kinds of unnatural creatures, team members experienced poltergeist type activity, objects being moved about, even in locked rooms, creepy sounds, sharp temperature drops, disembodied voices, or laughter, and trickster kind of activity. Brightly lit orbs floating in their vicinity, then disappearing, cones of silence, and on occasion, indistinct or cloaked figures they referred to as shadow people.
So, how did these shadow people fit in? Many government and military personnel came to the project site, but when they returned to their homes, 1,500 or 2,000 miles away, there their spouses and children began experiencing these same kinds of high strangeness. They might hear footsteps in the hallway outside their bedroom or see skinwalker like beasts outside in their yards glaring at them before stalking away. I do wonder if these are like legit skinwalker like beasts since we've done an episode on what skinwalkers actually are.
Yeah, I don't know. I was curious the same thing.
Finding big canine footprints in the yard or snow the next morning, or in snow the next morning, sorry. This might happen even to their teenage children, despite the officer having told them nothing about what was happening in Utah. Some heard knocks on their door, but never found anyone there, or heard their spouse calling them and hurried back, only to hear their spouse had never, or learn their spouse had never called them. And many of them woke in the morning to find shadow people at the foot of their beds. It should be pointed out also that this phenomenon is not only associated with Skinwalker Ranch. Pilots who come close to UAPs sometimes bring the same something home with them, referred to as hitchhikers. Even the pilot who coined the term flying saucers in Washington state in 1947, after flying near some unknown aerial vehicles near Mount Rainier before the Roswell incident, is known to have experienced paranormal phenomena. What does all this mean? The study kept an open mind and attempted to understand, but whatever's behind the phenomenon seemed interested in stimulating human interest and keeping our attention, but not providing answers.
Of course, no answers.
No.
The AAWSAP was supposed to stay secret, but somebody in the intelligence community leaked a memo from Senator Reid to the Secretary of Defense to a variety of politicians, and the word began to get out, including regarding the unsettling and alarming paranormal things the researchers were documenting. The fundamentalist Christian wing of the Republican Party, however, believed that the project was stirring up Satan, awakening demons, and so on. And as soon as their party was in a position to do so, they put a stop to the research.
What? Okay. They actually stopped that? Wow, okay. I've read this so many times and it just now hit me.
Because of the devil.
Because of the devil. And stopping research is going to stop him. Okay. Yep. All right. Carry
on. That's why they say don't talk about it. It'll go away if you don't talk about it.
Right? Yeah, ignore it. Don't talk about it.
Congress has taken increased interest the past couple of years in penetrating the secrecy around the whole subject of UFOs/UAPs. They required the Department of Defense to form a UAP task force and to release an unclassified report in June 2021, which was done. In the next year's military funding bill, they passed the Gillibrand Amendment, which required a much larger and more comprehensive effort be undertaken to gather and analyze data about UAPs and begin getting to the bottom of it all. Meantime, we are left to wonder, are poltergeists and shadow people actually real? Based on the observations of many credible witnesses documented by AAWSAP and written about in Skinwalkers at the Pentagon? Or does whatever extra-dimensional or interstellar civilization is operating the UAPs telepathically read basic human fears and provide illusions, hallucinations, or in some cases technological special effects that make these things seem real because we believe or fear they are real?
It's wild. All of this is just wild to me because, like, these are top-ranking, security clearanced governmental personnel that are going and conducting these studies. So they had to go back home from, Skinwalker Ranch or wherever it was they go back home, and their family can't know what they're doing. When you have clearance like that, a lot of the times your family doesn't know where you are. They don't know what you're working on. You're not allowed to say anything. I mean, I have family members in the military that I don't know what they were doing for large chunks of their service time because of the security clearance that they had.
The amount of people that actually have, or families, I should say, the amount of families that have to, put up with that.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be the mother or father or child that has to go off to take care of military business and come back and not be able to say a single word to us about it.
Yeah, so they come back and this stuff, they have quote unquote hitchhikers that come back with them and their family experiences stuff and they're still experiencing stuff, even though they're not where the project was taking place,
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, I don't know, it's kind of wild to think about. I definitely don't think it's not real. To answer that question that was put out. I feel like we've been all over the place with this subject, but I really tried to tie it all together. I've had my own experiences with shadow beings, and I shared some of those with you guys, but not all. Just like anyone else that has had these experiences, I would like to understand what they are, what all they are capable of, what they want, and why they are here. We touched on what the Choctaw referred to these beings as, Middle Eastern folklore, jinns, governmental investigations, Navajo beliefs, poltergeist, and I'm sure I'm leaving something out. But we covered a good distance. And while I'm beginning to come to my own conclusions of what these beings are, I prefer not to say and allow you to come to your own conclusion. So tell me, what do you feel these shadow beings are? Maybe you just need some sleep, or maybe it's just a trick of the light and these shadows aren't beings at all.
Don't forget to send us an email if you have your own story to share.
I do believe that we're done. So I hope you will come back next week and listen again. You can watch our TikTok account throughout the week to get hints of what the next episode will be about. Until then, keep a light on and those curtains drawn after dark.